Okay, so we will start with Melody. Melody is in the School of Public Health at NYU. She was actually our winner for the Societal Impact Award last year. I mean, she has done a ton of work with health literacy and, also really giving back to the community. So, Melody, it's yours.
Hello, everyone. I will say that I love being a biostatistician, but I did not always feel that way. I did not feel when I came in that our field was super welcoming. And because I was in public health, I just felt public health was more diverse, more welcoming, and I kind of went the sort of public health route. Not that there's not biostatisticians in public health, but I went to more public health conferences instead of statistics conferences. And I spent the majority of the first part of my career not being in a biostat department. I was always in a medical school or an environment where I was one of few statisticians or like one in my department, but there was tons around. And I remember when I was starting my career off at the first university I was at, so I'm also a mover. I've been at 3 different institutions. I remember that the most senior Black person on my campus told me that I suffered from high self-esteem as if it was an illness. And I remember thinking about it because I knew that she was not coming from a place of malice. She was giving me advice, and she's from a different generation than I'm at, and she had risen the academic ranks and had been successful at that. But it also made me sort of cringe on the inside that someone would tell me that I suffer from high self-esteem as if it was an illness when I was in a career where, like, if you're an academic and you don't have high self-esteem, then you're in the wrong career, because the whole thing is about people telling you that your work isn't great enough and you need to fix things. And so I feel like high self-esteem is really a prerequisite for some of the stuff that we have to do. And so I walked away from that conversation, and I came back to her maybe a week later, and I said, I understand that people may perceive my self-esteem as cockiness or arrogance or something negative, but I wonder if you would have given me the same advice if I was a white male or a white female. And I think that just made her rethink how, she said it to me. And like I said, obviously it was never a malice. It wasn't a microaggression. Like, this was an older Black woman trying to give me advice in the field. But I also said to her, how bad would it be if after I walked away from this, I had less self-esteem? Like, I know that that's not what you were trying to get me to do. You were trying to get me to change how I present myself in the world. And so I say that now because I tell people that I have this affliction called high self-esteem. I wear it as a badge of honor now because I think it's important for us to be confident in our skills. Like, we train the same way as any other person. We have great skills. I think that's the nice thing about being a statistician and a data scientist. We come out of school with these great skills and we can do great things. And I think high self-esteem is what should come from that. If you can work with data and you can make good inferences and you can have impact, then you should have high self-esteem. And so I just say that to say that sometimes when we think about what the experiences of Blacks are, we think about microaggressions or people trying to purposely do stuff for malice. This was someone trying to give me what she thought was really sound advice and being a mentor to me, and not thinking about how that could have like just hurt my self-esteem or how that could have changed the way that I would have presented myself in the world. And then I sort of said to her, if the worst thing people think about me is that I have high self-esteem, then I'll take that. Like, there's so many things that people think about Black women in general that if my critique is that I have high self-esteem, I'm willing to wear that badge. So I'm excited to have this conversation. I want to pass it on to other people, but I also want us to think about just some of the situations that we're often in that are not malice, that really can impact the way we move in our careers and in the world.
Thanks, Melody. Jesse, this was a great segue. So why don't you talk about yourself, and then we'll go back to the speakers and then also the audience. We'd love to hear from the audience too.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Lyons, or Jessie. I am the program manager at Tableau. I am also, or Tableau for Teaching to be specific, I am also an adjunct professor, and I teach statistics in almost any psychology course you can think of, in addition to being with NWEA as a professional learning consultant. So I used to work with them full time, and now I just help with doing a lot of data coaching, data strategists, working with school districts to see and understand their data, and really bringing that home. I thank you so much for this opportunity to kind of talk with everyone, and just hearing a little bit, like I know Rhonda, you talked in the very beginning, the things that you stated, and Melody, same situation. I love that you're saying that. I was not prepared for that, but what you are just saying is so spot on, because I'm a mentor to people. And I remember actually, and I actually feel bad about it. I actually told someone, you might need to put a different voice on when you're speaking where we're at, simply because as a Black woman, we are told that. Like, I get told the same thing, that, you know, you tout your resume or your credentials or experience and say, well, actually, I'm a researcher. So I'm used to saying according to whatever. I'm used to providing that credibility behind it. So the way I talk sometimes matches that. But again, people are like, it comes off with hubris, or it comes off, and same thing, Melody is like, well, would you ask that if I was different? You know, I don't get that opportunity. And the truth is, before I started doing that, no one listened to me, which is why I love data. Because when I came with anecdotal or testimonial evidence or participatory research, no one wanted to listen to that. But when I came in with data and statistics and brought in, that's when all of a sudden I was able to elevate voices. And that's what made me come to Tableau, is pretty much the data skills and data literacy, and being able to elevate voices. Irrespective of the language you use, whether it's research, whether it's data and analytics, I always tell people I'm about elevating voices. I want more and more people to see and hear different perspectives. And so that is kind of what I came in that aspect. Some of the other experiences, even just being a professor, I don't know about anyone else, but I know I walk in the room and people think I'm a and I tell people I give out Fs just like anybody else. So with that being, as a joke, but I always get told, like, are you a TA? Or I have my students Google me, or looked on my LinkedIn, or they want to look at my resume and they want to check and verify. And I always ask the same questions, like, would you do the same if I was not a woman or a woman of color? I just kind of ask those questions quite often. In addition to some of the other experiences, I'm always picked last to teach statistics. It's easier for me to teach social psych. It's easier for me to teach any of the other softer general psych courses. But statistics has always been where I'm at. I'm like, that's where my love is. That's where my passion are, research methods, and always pick last to do so. So it's just, again, those are just some of the experiences. I love to hear from more people as well, but I am so happy to be in this safe space and to be able to openly talk about this with courage and with candor. So thank you.
Thanks, Jessie. And I think this is one of the discussions we had about, CWS, that we were going to be a safe space where we could talk about these things, and we don't have to always adhere to, what is the right thing to say, and we should say what we feel. So having said that, I think Brittany is another outspoken person, and I would love to hear Brittany's experience. Brittany.
Oh, that's funny. So first of all, I feel like we should have a podcast or something with Melody and Jessica. You guys are bringing the truth. I'd love to talk with y'all more, and everybody else on here about, self-esteem, resilience. I think people sometimes say those words, but like both of you mentioned some of the things you went through where it just kind of chips away at it. I know, Melanie, you did not go into the microaggressions, which there are a ton, but I know, Jessica, you also mentioned like when it comes to teaching and you walk into the room, like happens to me, two people looking at you like up and down. What that impact is, right? It might not be much over time, but it's just like, it just kind of chips away at you. And it's just like, and then you have kind of the opposite of what Melody was saying, like you're too, you know, have too much self-esteem. It's like, how do you balance this, right? So I think there's something I've learned more about having space for the mental health and to be, you know, just be true to that. This can be impactful, right? So like, can we find mentors and things like that to help through this process? So I think that's a big thing. Another thing, I definitely agree with Jessica that I love data as well. I think this field is very interesting though. And I'm kind of more in business and data science, where I teach data science, teach machine learning on one hand, but then on the other hand, good gosh, I hear about all of the biased algorithms, whether it be healthcare, hiring, recidivism rates, and everything. So like, how to deal with that? So I think there's a big burgeoning field of AI ethics. So that really encourages me, but it's really interesting to be in certain spaces. Like I was just in a research talk where somebody came up with this new data streaming algorithm to help predict house prices, which is great. But I'm sitting here thinking like, last month, a news article came out in a lawsuit about how Black houses are always undervalued. So while he's giving the talk, I'm thinking about, man, if I ever show my house, I'm gonna have to put down all my pictures and all this, and if this is embedded into the algorithm. So like I'm getting stressed worrying about this side of things, but I think that should be considered more. Like how what we do is great, but also how some of the racial bias, but also for women and other groups, how that can really disadvantage certain organizations, certain communities, and it's not taught in data science or in our curriculum. So how can we deal with that, right? So we're not just, graduating people who are doing these same things and still having these bias in their algorithms. So that's my thoughts. But anyway, I'm really looking forward to hearing more from everyone. So.
Questions for our three speakers, but I will come back to the three speakers again. I would like to, talk about the self-esteem issue and, just keep your voice down issues. So questions for our three panelists, please.
I just want to piggyback on the issue that Brittany brought up. Jan, you know this, but I feel like diversifying our field is an ethical imperative. And I think it is an ethical imperative just because of those issues that you raised, is that we need people who are going to think about these types of questions. And it usually doesn't come unless you're impacted by the outcomes of these things. And it's not that I don't think other people care, but I just think they're blinded to some of the situations around, how these algorithms work and how the data is already embedded with racist and inequities, and that the algorithms really can just perpetuate those inequities. And I do think as our field grows, data ethics is a real key issue for us. And I really feel like diversity is an ethical imperative for our field with the way that it is going. We need to make sure that diverse people have these skills because, Jane, you were talking about data is the new best commodity, right? And what does it mean if only some people know how to work with it?
To piggyback off of that, I also think that, I will be honest, a safe space. I think that sometimes it's deliberate. I think it's purposeful. I think it's intentional. I think it's to keep certain things at bay. So to be honest with you, as much as I love data, and I know everyone's talking about data literacy and data skills, it actually makes me slightly afraid at the same time. Going to some of the things that you were talking about, Brittany, with the AI ethics, and despite the best intentions, which is one of my favorite books, again, in educational pieces, but despite the best intentions, that people might have these well-intended, but there's cultural impacts that if you don't live and breathe in that culture, you will not understand. that it's a very different walk sometimes. And so that's what always keeps me kind of nervous when I see all of these low code, no code, machine learning, everyone's doing data literacy. Now places are like, we're going to give you a qualitative narrative. I'm like, what? Pause, wait, hold up. Like before you do a qualitative narrative, should it be done by a machine? That in itself, right? And I hate to put my professor hat on, but that in itself, I was like, I know my students are probably like, well, that's not what Jessica taught us. Because I'm like, when it comes to qualitative research, I'm talking about people. I can't explain why until someone tells me why, right? Like that's the essence of qualitative research, is to explain the why. But now everyone's big on like getting data out there and getting these machines to make it go faster. I actually want to slow it down and get more people involved. Slow it down and get some diverse perspectives before we start putting things out there. But I think that's where some of this clash between big tech companies or new products and innovation, right? Versus, you know, kind of that slower process where it takes time to hear different voices. So again, not to like jump on it, but those are some of the things that I actually get worried about as far as when we're talking about like data literacy and data skills. And again, I think that sometimes it's done on purpose.
Hey, we have 4 minutes, 1 minute each. Melody, sum up.
I think that we often hear that there are pipeline issues in our field, but I just rewatched Hidden Figures recently, and I feel like if Black women were considered human calculators back in the day, why do we think now that they're incapable of doing this type of work? And so I think it's not that there's no pipeline. I think the pathways are different to get into our field, and we can do something to change that. And I think, like I said, I think diversifying our field is an imperative. And so I think it's up to us to do the things we need to do to make our field more diverse in the future.
Jessie.
I 100% piggyback. Kim, I'm so sorry. Your question is really, really just burning in my head about the pathways, pipelines, and things of that nature. I think even starting with this, I think we're doing the right thing by having these open conversations. I will tell you, just working in the schools for K-12, they need us. I think that academia is very competitive. I think that we actually benefit off of it being competitive. And I think if we pull that down just a little bit and bring in, again, elevating voices is definitely needed, because the students are watching and they're listening and they want to share their voices. They want to be part of it. But I think some of it's on us. I think some of it is our hubris, our elitism, and our competitiveness within each other. And maybe if we pull that down and start opening up perspectives, and I guess using Robert Selman perspective taking a little bit is definitely needed. But I think this is the right space to go. I think this is a great way just to collaborate and work together.
Brittany.
Well, they pretty much summed it all up. I completely agree. And just to third that, just to know that we're all in this together, even if you're not Black, even if you're not a Black woman, this is not the work of just one specific community to raise us all up together. Even if we have a little bit, different experiences, I think we can still do all the work, together to move us forward as a community. And it's really inspiring to hear everybody's questions and things like that. I know when I was in school, I guess I'm not exactly sure, but I wish some of my professors would, cover more things, and that's what I hope to do. So it's really exciting to hear everybody's perspective and background.
Okay, we have 1 minute. Thank you, everybody. And I am saving the chat, and we are recording this, so I will try and have this available for anybody. And I know lots of people couldn't be there, so if I send you, feel free to share. And we can keep doing this. It doesn't have to be only for Black History Month. We can do this because it's important, and we need these kinds of conversations. And otherwise, how do we get together? How do we decide there's a cohort of us thinking about these things? So that's kind of, and so feel free to reach out to me anytime. If you have questions about this, to CWS as well. And then in terms of the speakers, I'm sure, I think Melody and Jessie all shared their Twitter, and even Jessie even shared her phone number on there. So please feel free to, you're not alone. The whole point is nobody can do this alone. We as a group can do something. Maybe not a lot, but something. Let's start somewhere. That's the point. Okay. Thank you, everybody.